problem. In real life, how many of us use that in our Nobody, right?
For kids.
For kids, for
Only
sure.
for kids. And that also is say, okay, don't worry too much about it, right? As long as the kid is doing the job, we're okay. So we are actually used to developing a mindset which doesn't work with time, right? And it is okay to overstep. It is okay to get late. It is okay to start late. That's why the whole notion is that we should engage in time boxing. Now I implement that in my life every day, friends. Tomorrow what I have to do, and Regina can vouch for me sitting in that corner, before I start my day tomorrow, today evening I'll have a set of emails that I will do, and I'll time box them. Between 1 to 2 I will do this, between 2 to 4 I will do this. So that all the distractions that are happening do not take away my energy, because I'm still responsible for what is to be delivered. So the same concept comes in here, that everything in Scrum is time boxed. We waste a lot of time in meetings, am I right, friends?
We do.
Right? How much time you spend in a meeting?
1 hour, more than a day. 40%.
Yeah, the whole day.
Tell me how many times the
Then what are
manager
you
says,
doing?
can we have a quick meeting?
Oh, all the time.
All the time. And then he says quick meeting, and how long it goes? And then he starts talking about something which is completely out of the context, right? So that's why the Scrum says, hey, how are you going to implement your job if you get into these meetings so often and you don't achieve anything from that? 60 to 70% of the software, let's face it, friends, fails. Am I right?
Yeah.
Do you agree? You can disagree.
I mean, people don't use. That's the criteria.
Correct. So what we're saying here is, hello, if you have a fixed timeline for everything, you will be able to achieve your goals. For example, if you have a sprint planning meeting which goes on for days and days, you won't achieve much, right? So for every sprint that you have, let's say for 4 weeks, first day of this, let's say January is not a good example, let's say February, right? February 1st you're starting the sprint. And let's say that happens to be a Monday morning, right? So let's do this. Hey, let's get together and we're going to do this sprint over the entire month of February. So Monday, one day let's sit down and talk. What are we going to do, right? Let's spend half of the day from morning, breakfast to lunchtime to figure out what is to be done. After that, let the team say if they can do it, right? Often in real life what happens is, like he said, director of engineering, that nasty guy comes and says, hey, you got to do this, right? Tell me how will you do it? So what we're saying here, we engage the team. So the team is involved in that. And after that, the team reflects what they can pick up or they cannot do. So that's why in the sprint planning meeting, you have the 4 hours. First is what, and then next 4 hours, how, right? For a sprint which is for the entire month of February. So if you have 2 weeks sprint, the time will be 1/4. Now this is important because, hey, if you cannot figure it out what is to be done in 4 hours, you won't be able to figure it out in 10 hours. Because there's so much of conflict, there's so much of disagreement. So be very, very focused on what we want to achieve.
So quick question. So you said to the sprint planning meeting out of 4 weeks, you said to spend 4 hours in the first week regarding sprint planning.
1 day. First day. First Monday.
Yes.
First day.
Yeah.
Yes. So I said, assuming we are 30 days, actually February this year is only 28 days. So let's assume a month is 30 days and first of the month is a Monday. So let's spend half of the day thinking what is to be done and spend rest of the half day how will we do it. But after that, let's not again come back in these meetings that boss says, hey, can we have a quick meeting and spend another 3 hours in the day doing nothing, achieving nothing. And Steve, you can correct me because these are my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And if you're just trying to remember the time boxes, it's pretty simple, which is that the sprint planning meeting is 2 hours maximum for every week of your sprints. So in a 2-week sprint, it's 4 hours maximum. The other key meetings, the retrospective and the review, 1 hour for every week of sprints. So it's a 2-hour meeting.
Could you repeat that again?
Sure. So it's for a 2-week sprint, 4 hours for planning. In other words, it's 2 hours for every week of your sprints. And for all the other key meetings, the review and the retrospective, it is 1 hour for every week of your sprints. So a maximum of 2 hours for a 2-week sprint, 4 hours for a 4-week sprint, and so forth. Yeah. And
So
the
for
daily stand-up's always 15 minutes.
So that is what I was saying earlier, right? So in a 2-week sprint, you pretty much take away 1 day
Yes,
in meetings.
you sure do.
In meetings, meaning planning, review, and retrospective meetings.
Yep.
So in a 40 hours, you take 8 hours. And then there is a daily scrum meeting of 15 minutes, which never ends in 15 minutes.
We'll talk about how you
Yeah,
fix that.
I know. So that would be like, let's say 2 weeks is close to 2 hours. So
Sure, you're right.
Yes.
12:26.
So like 15% of the sprint can be just our
But
meeting.
that's how you
Yes.
monitor the user stories and.
well,
the-
no, that's the complaint. One complaint that I get from development people is, oh man, I get to attend too many meetings. For the 2 weeks, I'm attending too many meetings.
Yep.
Whereas, I mean, I'm not a fan of waterfall versus agile, but I'm saying in waterfall this won't be like not. I don't think this many meetings needed for that. I mean, yes, you'll be sitting in your own design phase. You'll be having your own meetings, but you're not reporting to. Again, I'm saying this is the complaint that I get. I mean, I just wanted to see how Scrum
See,
Alliance says.
Scrum
about it.
Alliance, the way they look at it is that having too many unstructured meetings versus having structured meetings
Okay.
makes the difference.
Yeah, probably you're in such amount of time in meetings, even in waterfall, but it's not accounted for, you're not looking for it.
Correct. There are a lot of meetings in waterfall as well, but they're ad hoc meetings, right? Here they're structured daily, weekly, fortnightly, bi-weekly, or monthly, depending on what kind of sprint you are implementing. So that's the idea, right?
That and the idea that it's a maximum, right? So you're
Right,
absolutely
right.
not required to spend 4 hours in your sprint planning meeting. And most teams, when they get really good at it, can do it in half that easily, you know. So again, it can be shorter. So it might be partly just how we're running the meeting, and sometimes we'll need to turn the lens or the mirror back to the developers and say, well, I hear you that you don't like how long the meetings are, but do you remember how you wanted to talk for 30 minutes on that one story in the sprint planning meeting? Maybe we need to learn to be faster about that. Maybe we need to learn to come to decisions quicker, you know, things like that. So.
And again, I think it's culture.
Scrum Master.
When compared to time, because developers, they come back and give you the updates probably in a week or in 2 weeks, they're working the last day, and they don't like giving updates every day,
Yeah.
saying that what was accomplished, what is due, and all those things. So it's more of culture, I guess.
Correct. And in my real life, when I'm implementing projects, I feel these guys are really giving me a hard time, especially developers. So I don't know, that's not a feeling across the board, is it?
I mean, they're irreplaceable, right?
No, no, I'm not.
See, I mean,
I'm not trying to digress from the Scrum Alliance philosophy. What I'm saying is that often as human beings, we get that feeling, right? But the idea here is, for example, right now it's 12:28, and time boxing says that we got to finish this in 2 minutes, right? Let's see how we can do it.
One question here, right?
Yeah.
Sprint planning meeting. Sprint planning meeting, right? I mean, it will stretch more if based on the kind of product we are trying to really build, right? If it is totally a new software, then you might have to extend the timing of the meeting to kind of discuss the
No, but
design
the-
or the thing.
No,
but it's
that's-
still-
Right. We said
What's an
Planning is what you are planning to do in that sprint is
Yeah.
sprint planning.
Next 2 weeks.
Everything is time boxed. The
Yeah.
whole notion in Scrum is that start time
That's the misunderstanding.
0.00, finish time 4 hours, 240 minutes. The moment it is 240 minutes, it's time boxed, it is timed out, right?
So maybe it's partly what you're trying to get done in the meeting, right? So you mentioned design, right? I really don't want to talk much
Yeah.
about design and sprint planning. Just enough maybe to get that sketch of where the coding areas are and stuff. And if I'm not sure, I'll schedule a design review, you know, task, and then just some holding places or something. So don't get too stuck in the meetings either, right? Allow things to happen in the sprints themselves. That's a little bit of that letting go that we have to get used to, you know, allow more of the work and even the design and even the final requirements discussions to happen in the sprint, you know, and not always ahead of time. So that might help.
I have a question. So for first sprint, how to decide how much is enough? Because initially you don't have idea about velocity or capacity.
That's a tricky one, yeah. You want to speak that? You want me to speak to that?
I think you have to create history. Right? I think you have to go through that experience and then build some data and then probably use that in your subsequent script. That's
So
why.
let's try out for first sprint and then.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve may not like it because the Scrum Alliance doesn't believe in sprint zero too much. So
Sure.
it is kind of a Scrum bot.
But the idea of, if you can wait to do like release planning, which is sort of trying to predict the future so many sprints in advance, until after you have a few sprints under your belt, to his point, so that you actually have a sense for your velocity, it's definitely better, right? There are a few heuristics you can use when you're starting up that we could talk about, but in general, it's much better to get some live experience.
So in the PMI world, they call it historical data, right?
Yeah.
Here we call it like you were playing that game, right? First time, if I ask you, how many balls do you think you can, move around? So you'll see some numbers. Everybody will throw a number. So that will kind of give us an idea through a brainstorming session based on the expertise that the team member brings.
So I'm a little confused about the sprint planning meeting. What exactly are we trying to achieve, or what exactly do we discuss in this meeting? Is it just the backlog, and then we leave it there and let people work on
So
it?
we pick up the product backlog, and we, as a product owner, decides what items are prioritized, what are on the top of the list that have to be done in the sprint, based on the business value they can provide, right? So that's the first piece of it. The second piece is how much the team can really do it. Often in real life, it is just thrust upon them. Go and do this. But the reality is that it cannot be done. So Scrum is very realistic about
So
it.
we do the estimates basically.
Estimate based on the team, and the team can say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm sounding very negative. It's not like that. But the idea is, you say, well, I can do this, but maybe not this. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to give you a very structured way of approaching that as a suggestion, because it actually, Scrum itself is silent on how to run the sprint planning meeting. It just says there's sort of two conceptual parts to it. You figure out how to break it into smaller technical work items, and then the team self-organizes to get it done. That's all it says. But we're going to give you some ideas about how people typically run that. So.
Yeah. Also, another assumption is that there were some preliminary meetings that happened before that, like working sessions or workshops. Like,
Grooming
I
or
think,
refining session.
I think what we are all confused is how can you attack the bigger problem than 2 hours?
Yeah.
So I guess that's what we have
The
to do.
brainstorming sessions and all that.
Yeah, brainstorming that all happens.
I think if you
before
come
even we
prepared,
get into that, yeah.
I think if you
product
come
backlog.
prepared, usually in corporate scenarios, what happens is just everybody walks into the meeting, right? But if you're prepared, you have some notes, and you can keep it very crisp and quick and short.
Yeah,
Let's do
before
it.
the sprint zero, actually, there should be some kind of
There's a release
evaluation.
planning meeting.
Yeah, release planning or whatever, where people at least know what they're getting into, right? You
Yeah.
can't just walk in sprint planning, oh, okay, developer, you're doing this, QA, you're doing.
So we have actually everything release planning, and then product vision release planning,
Correct,
and then
correct, yeah.
sprint and at the daily level. So you will see as we go through.
How
the
does the
presentation.
release planning time compare to the
Yeah, I think we're getting a little ahead, but the starts with the roadmap, then vision, then release, then sprint, and then daily meeting, right? So we have a structure from the top to the tactical level for implementing the project.
And we will run through every one of these.
Yeah. But here what we're saying is, hey, let's have a big picture of what we're doing in 4 hours for a monthly sprint, and then how we're going to do it. The technical issues we'll figure out during this meeting. The team will say, I can do this, but this one, we don't have the capability to get it done. So then we will not pick it up. Right? That's, I think, a major departure from the waterfallish work. The second is every day we meet, same place, same time, 15 minutes. Right? Now, usually in real life, it goes half an hour, 45 minutes. That's not recommended.
Yeah, we'll talk about ways to avoid
Actually,
that.
no, daily scrum is like, it's just 3 questions that we answer.
Yes. What we did yesterday, what are you doing today, what is blocking you? right?
So,
That
and
was
it's not that
big,
difficult.
right?
Right? Somebody
See,
Usually it is.
or if there are seven,
Because
you
people
ask,
tend
you
to-
make your team focus on, okay, answer to this question only. I don't want
Yeah.
to listen to anything.
Correct.
So even if
Yeah,
you
that's
ask
right.
what is blocking, it will become a big
So the thing
story
is-
where
this is not a status meeting, right?
Yeah.
This is this
Exactly.
is actually just to understand what the impediments are,
Right.
so that the team can either figure it out or use the Scrum Master as a facilitator to get those answers from somewhere if they're not there.
And also they're only focused on that particular user stories for that sprint, not like overall
like the-
project.
yeah.
Correct,
So
correct.
if they're assigned 2 user stories, that's all they have to answer.
Correct.
And
So
you're
it's a
doing
very
this every
focused-
day, so every day how many roadblocks or showstoppers can you really
Correct,
get
because
in?
what you're doing is something which is this big gets distributed into a small thing. And 3 questions. Oh, what were you doing yesterday? So everybody knows the team. Often, sometimes there's some smart people who don't do much, right? They're hiding somewhere in the corner, and suddenly they appear and they tell the project manager, "Hey, I was the one who's doing everything." So we're saying visibility, right? Everybody knows what's going on here. The team is saying, "Hey, what you did yesterday?" You can ask. Imagine some of you cannot ask that to a lot of people in your team, am I right? Right? But here, everybody can ask and know what you did yesterday. Oh, I was sleeping, I was in the mall, I was checking my Facebook account. That's the idea. The idea is to bring work visibly in front of everybody, in front of the team. So that some people who are working very hard and some are not, are all at the equal footing. And then, and everybody knows what is blocking them. The main goal is to understand the impediments that can be fixed. Often they get transferred to the next sprint or next week and nobody cares. So that's bringing everything into focus. And then when everything is done, sprint review, right? You sit down and you talk, like some of you said demo. So a little bit of it is demo, more than it is engaging the customer, the stakeholders, and this is what the team has created, right? Again, these meetings can go long for days and not achieve anything. But here, this is what we have created. This is potentially shapeable. That's it. And the team has a discussion, figures out what can they pick up from here for the next sprint, right? We're done.
I actually have a, I'm just stepping here. So I use this sprint review as more like a UAT session because it just gets done within the 2-hour time period where you just demo and everybody, all the stakeholders, everybody present, they see what have we achieved and they sign off immediately rather than wait for them to go on and on and on for testing and then they spend the whole month.
If you can achieve that, wonderful. That's what Steve said.
No,
That's
I
the
mean,
max.
that's the goal basically.
Yeah, that's the max. If you can finish in 10 minutes, wonderful, exciting, right? The essence is time is very important. You cannot waste a very valuable resource in so many different directions.
Well, just as an
Focus
example,
on-
it's pretty rare that the sprint review actually runs more than an hour. Because you
Yeah.
remember your audience, right? We're talking about like senior people and stuff, and they have neither the time nor the interest to listen to you talk about like bit level things and stuff, right? So,
But is the
question-
assumption that when you get into the sprint planning meeting, proof of concept has been delivered successfully, so everyone is aware this can be attained, or is it just?
Not necessarily, but if it was some really new domain, that might have been part of your plan, that you would in fact do a proof of concept. That's certainly up to the team to decide if that's necessary, right? Yeah. Sometimes it depends what your product is, right? In some products, it's just you putting out release 7.2 of the same old thing, so you know what it is, right? It's just a series of new features, and so it just depends.
Does Scrum Alliance suggest any way to track impediments?
Exactly.
Because
Daily meeting, right?
yeah, daily meeting is fine, but
Track
most
impediments.
of the times
So I
impediments.
think impediment backlog.
We sort of suggest in the slides here, the idea that you might find it useful to have an impediment backlog, but you'll find that the Scrum guide says nothing about it at all. It's just a good idea that we find some people doing. If you're taking on a bunch of impediments for the team, it'd be nice if you were sort of accountable back to them and told them, hey, you gave me 5 things, and I just want to let you know I got this one fixed.
There is a place in Rally to track these.
Not probably
In an
specifically,
Excel, it's a separate sheet
Yeah.
then.
but you could easily create like a sub-project or something.
Maybe you can just log the story at the
I
end.
think in Jira, I think
Yeah.
there's a
I think it's
tracking.
something
Right,
like
right.
what we call action item issues list that we track on a
That way,
regular
maybe.
basis. Yeah, that's the
give ETA and.
Correct, and whatever is
ownership.
open, in progress, tomorrow date or whatever.
So that's a little bit of a Kanban, which is, what is to be done, work in progress, what has been completed. That is also integrated here. In
So how are we feeling about our time box
I
for
think
lunch?
We are good
2
10
minutes.
minutes ahead.
Last 2 minutes,
Yeah.
we're done, right?
Yeah.
Everybody seems
Question.
to be hungry.
The sprint review will be basically replacing the UAT phase, right? In other words, is it?
So are you saying sprint review is equal to UAT?
Sorry, the sprint review can include
It's
you.
not testing,
That's a-
it's
yeah.
like, it's
Yeah.
more focusing on definition of done. So
Yeah.
whatever you are saying, okay, I'm creating the story and the story is completed when this is accomplished. And this is what you are reviewing in this meeting and say, okay, yes, this is accomplished, let's move
It's
on.
more like.
And it will also
bicycles.
depend upon the type of sprint you're doing.
That is true, but that's,
Yeah.
that's why we said we'll have a system right here. And the system is like this: design, develop, test,
Test.
everything within the
Accept.
sprint. And something which is ready to be shipped or potentially shippable or almost there. We're not there yet, but we're almost there. And hey, what do you think? So user, I would probably not use the term user acceptance testing as
Yeah.
sprint review. I would say.
I mean, there's always a desire to map what we know today to the new thing. There may or may not map directly, right? And so it is true that we would ideally like to have customers there providing us feedback after watching live software demo. It feels like a little piece of UAT. It may not be the same as a full UAT. It just depends on what you meant by that, right?
So it depends upon who's your stakeholder in that meeting, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much if it is a director level or VP level folks, you don't want to give a big demo, but you can kind of show clips and kind of make it more, easy for them to understand what we have done and kind of
Right.
take
But
it
if it's
forward.
a detailed end user customer, then maybe they want you to run them through the whole thing. or something,
Right.
So yeah, I think you're right. Always know your audience.
That's why it would be shorter, bigger, depending on.
And also break it up into different feature, the user stories, it could be, okay, user story 1, this is the feature that is coming up with the end result, okay, this is what we're showing. Then the next one, then if you go like step by step, everything, it's more focused and it's more, enthusiastic.
Yeah. That is a very good way because you already define everything, user stories in the beginning,
Yeah.
in the sprint planning, and now you're saying checked, done. The expectation is everything is done.
And then in sprint retrospective, it's basically like lesson learned or what else is
What went right, what went wrong, hey, this is something we do very well, let's hold on to this. There's something which we didn't do very well, we need to improve on this.
Do we
So-
take out topics which we will use in our next, or like
No.
which we might pick up in our next sprint?
That's sprint
Do we
planning.
talk at all in sprint?
When you say
retrospective?
topic, what do you mean by topic?
Uh,
Like
stories.
technical stories, kind of discussions, or?
Or suppose we missed it, when we were doing our sprint reviews, we come up to know, okay, probably there's something which can be picked up in our next sprint. Do we still talk in the sprint retrospective meetings or no?
Probably not about the content, but
Just
really
high level.
retrospective is really just talking about how we're working together
Okay.
as a team in the process. We should probably talk about that right away in the sprint planning meeting, which is the
Okay.
next day usually, so.
Oh, okay.
So if you remember, Steve mentioned one is the product, other is process.
Okay.
So the product is the sprint review, right? So if you are talking about feature, functionality, again, we don't need that very often here. User story, technical issues, all that will come up in the next sprint.
I think
They
that is
emerge
the-
from this sprint review meeting and they will be taken up in the next sprint planning meeting. However, if you want to improve the process of your project, that piece will come here in the sprint.
Actually, I think the retrospect is a little different from what we're calling as lessons learned, because in lessons learned, we always talk about, we blame, we always talk about what went wrong, but we never talk about how we have to improve. So I think retrospect is more about focusing on improvement rather than, blaming on he did or she did or whatever.
Very good, very good. The idea is to learn from what we did and how to make it better the next time, right? So how do we continuously and consistently improve the process, because it's never going to be perfect. That's the idea. So Steve, do you think we did a good job?
I think so. We covered much more than time boxes, right? So,
Alright, so let's call it lunchtime. What do you think?
Yep,
guys?
sounds good.
12:45.
How long are we gonna take for lunch?
Let's ask the team. What do you think? The team will decide.
Half an hour, 45 minutes.
Do we need to go out or it's coming here?
Okay,
No,
yeah,
it
half
will
hour
be
sounds
out.
good.
12:45, 1:15. How's that? Okay.